Hello, everybody. I'm just really honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to see some faces. My area of teaching has been, well, I have two main areas of teaching that I've had. I come from, in arts education, and I also taught English as a second language for a long time. And they're two very diverse areas, but for me, they've come together a great deal. So I don't know if anybody here has ever taught English as a second language, but it's very, very interactive. And one thing that's always been very important is that you would almost never begin the class without doing a warm-up. And so what I found really important is that the way we begin a class sets the tone for the entire class. And warm-ups are generally very interactive. It's important to get people really comfortable and speaking with each other. And as I said, it sets a really nice tone. The other area that I'm in is arts education, and when I was doing my master's in the arts, it was really interesting being among very arts-oriented people, and we all, what was really important to me is that we all had stories. As artists, we're very aware of being very emotional beings, and we have life stories, and so when I began teaching here on campus, I was very interested in hearing the voices of other students. To bring who they are as human beings and as people into the classroom. I wanted to hear, who are you? What is your story? I know we're here to cover this content, but I'm really interested in hearing your voices and in hearing something about yourself or bringing something of you into the class. So this is why I've called it considering the whole person and the presence of mind. I'll get to that, and the social connections. So as I mentioned, we're all, we might not necessarily invite this aspect into the classroom, but we're all beings with rich and complex emotional lives. Around midterm time, these emotional lives become, that's why I've got this sometimes burdensome, you notice the tone goes down. And so I really like to acknowledge this with my students right at the beginning of the class. Yes, it's a really tough time. Let's just take a few moments to acknowledge that, bring part of ourselves into the classroom. So here we go. How do we acknowledge who students are as human beings, bringing that part of them into the class. And then I feel that once that comes into the classroom, once we hear that, then I feel it creates a much better platform to really go on to the content at hand. So to bring their focus into the here and now. Okay, so by nature I'm very introverted. It might not be obvious by the profession I'm in, but when I say bringing part of who they are into the class, knowing that there's always so much that's going on inside. And then sharing that outwardly in some way. So this will really depend on the context. So I've had 3 main contexts that I've been teaching in recent years. So the first one is I've been teaching Foundations of Academic Literacy, which is a course that students take in their first year. They are required to take it. They're usually not very happy to have to take it because it's a requirement to be able to get to a writing level that the university requires. So because we're focusing very much on writing, what I will do at the beginning of the class is I'll do a free write with them. And what that is they write about something. I'll give them a prompt, I'll give them a topic, and it's writing that's specifically for them. And it's meant to be reflective. It's a chance for them to make the writing be their own, not for me or for anybody else. It's just for them, for themselves. As I mentioned, I'm also in arts education. So in the art education type courses that I've done, I've often opened with a silent activity that's a drawing, and I realize that this is not appropriate for many other subject areas, but I just wanted to humbly share what I've been doing. And then I've also had the honor of teaching in Interdisciplinary Expressive Arts at Kwantlen University. And we opened that class, well, for the entirety of the class, there are 35 students, and we don't sit in rows or by desks, we sit in a circle. And I learned a really important skill from my wonderful colleague, Rajdeep Gill, that he opened his class with just breathing together. And then I started doing it in my class as well. And in that class, I had the wonderful honor of reading students' journals because they write reflections on the class. And many of them said how helpful they found this part of the class, that they came into the class feeling so stressed and exhausted, all the pressure that they were under. And we just took a few moments just to look inward, to breathe, to acknowledge the present moment, to feel the weight of their body on the chair, and just to let things go, acknowledge that things are as they are, but to let them go. So I, of course, these are the contexts that I am familiar with and the work that I have done. I would like to invite or encourage for everyone to consider how something like this could be applied in the context that you're teaching in, because of course it needs to be adapted. Okay, so in these activities that we've been doing, whether they're doing a silent drawing, whether they're writing about in response to a prompt, or whether we're sitting breathing and acknowledging the present moment, there's something of themselves that comes out, and it's the going inward part, inviting contemplation and who they are as individuals. And what is relevant to them personally. So I really want to hear what that is. I don't want to hear it in front of the whole classroom, because of course that puts tremendous pressure on them, but if they're wanting to do that, then of course they're welcome to. For those of you who, I'm sure many of you know what a magical thing working with small groups can do. People will not want to say things in front of an entire class, but if you ask them to work in pairs or groups of 3 or 4, then suddenly things loosen up. In a couple of minutes, there's this wonderful buzzer there in the room, and ideas are going. So after all of these activities where there's silent contemplation, in other learning contexts, it could be in response to the content that's going on, there's sharing going on, and I invite for it to be as personal as possible. It's really important that the environment is very safe, that it's welcoming. I try to create a culture where students really want to hear about each other, where they're curious about each other, and feel that every voice is really valid. So in my teaching interdisciplinary expressive arts, many students confessed that they felt social anxiety in talking in class, and I thought, this is really interesting, and I have a teenage son who's going through the same thing. And so I'm just becoming more aware in recent months how pervasive this is and how it's an important thing to acknowledge for us. And so I like to create an environment where we're feeling safe, and if we are feeling safe socially and personally, then I feel we learn a lot better. Just another thought here. In my class where I have students who, in Foundations of Academic Literacy, they don't always necessarily want to be in that particular course, as I mentioned. And so when energy levels go low, I've talked about acknowledging the body and the spirit, the human aspect, the emotions. I think acknowledging the body is really important as well. So just as a short break, I will have them get up and do stretching, and that really helps.